Welcome back to another Black Star video. Today we're going to talk about blockchain. I'm starting a class. This is class 101. Let's talk about it. Let's get it. So thank you for tuning in. I'm starting a class in crypto, giving you a better idea of what blockchain is all about. That's what this class is, class 101. And I'm going to give you a little bit of understanding of what blockchain is, how the blockchain kind of works, and not to get too much detail, but to give you just enough so that way you understand what's actually happening behind closed doors. So when the systems are running, you'll get the better idea of what all blockchains are doing, and how transactions are happening on the chain and how it gets validated and so forth. And anyway, let's talk about it. Let's get it. So here goes a nice article that I found by Block Geeks. It gives a breakdown about blockchain and this detailed step-by-step guide. So we're going to skip the beginning and shoot right to the meat and potatoes. So before we get into this article about blockchain, I'm going to give my own summation of it real quick, and then we'll go through a little bit more detail. So what is blockchain? Blockchain is a chain of blocks of data linked together on a public ledger, on a ledger system controlled by different computers that are called nodes. And then these nodes all interact with one another to verify information consistently on the blockchain. No node or computer system can be invalid. They all have to be in unison. And if a transaction is invalid, the whole network invalidates the transaction across the board. That way, any node operator or node system can't inject the transaction into the ledger and then say this is valid, because the rest of the systems won't have it, and as a result, it'll reject it all across the board, and that transaction wouldn't be valid at all. So, in other words, it's like having your bank account, but instead of one bank having it in a system saying this, Sally has $10 in her account, there's hundreds of computers now that are saying that Sally has $10 in her account. And if someone was to try and write into the ledger, which records the data that Sally has $10 in her account, and says that Sally now has $9, and if the rest of the systems or computer systems are saying, no, Sally has 10, it rejects the subtraction of $1 from Sally's account and puts it back at $10. I hope that clarifies a little bit. Blockchain technology is the concept or protocol behind running a blockchain. Blockchain technology makes cryptocurrency, digital currency secured by cryptography, like Bitcoin, work just like internet makes email possible. So I personally don't like to say cryptocurrency, they're crypto assets, because our government or most governments don't understand crypto as currencies right now. It's not a recognized currency by any major country. And until then, I consider them crypto assets. We know that my man Gary likes to call them securities, but they're not at this time, even though he's saying just Bitcoin, until there's some legislation and some laws in place in which the SEC can make that determination across the board. Until then, it's a crypto asset and it's a commodity. The blockchain is immutable, unchangeable, meaning a transaction or file recorded cannot be changed. Disrupt the digital ledger, digital record of transaction or data stored in multiple places on a computer network, with many use cases behind cryptocurrencies or crypto assets. What happens in the blockchain is secured and recorded in these blocks. And these blocks of data are secured where they can't be deleted, can't be erased, can't be taken out, can't be subtracted. It stays there, and it stays there for the life of the chain. As long as those systems are running, there'll be access to that data information. And as such, it makes it immutable. Once it's recorded, it's there forever. So I made a whiteboard, and I kind of made something a little bit similar to this, but not as technical and savvy as this graph is. So what happens is, say, whether on your phone or your computer, and you have a transaction you want to send over, in our case, we're going to say Cardano or Bitcoin. So you send the transaction over through your wallet on your PC or your phone, and it gets sent out by signing. You sign the transaction, it gets sent out into the computers, which are these nodes, right? This is the network. And as the nodes get the transactions, one records it and then disperses it to the rest of the systems. Then it gets validated. All the systems run concurrently in consensus, meaning together, and then they say, yes, this transaction is valid. Rich has 2 Bitcoin in his wallet, half a Bitcoin in his wallet. He's sending half a Bitcoin to Mike. And then the computer systems then say, okay, we have Mike's address. We're going to verify, 1, that Rich has the Bitcoin to send, and then 2, whether Mike's wallet is valid. So the systems then verified that the two actions are indeed valid, and it processes the transaction and validates it. It verified the transaction. Once verified, it gets combined with other transactions and gets stored into a block and securely stored there. The new block with all those transactions are now added to the chain and is verified in the system. The transaction gets processed and the receiver receives his Bitcoin or Cardano or whatever the case may be. Crypto transaction is successful and everything happens. And that is really it. That's how it happens. The same thing kind of happens with your bank. So your bank holds your money. You have money inside your account. You open up your bank account through your mobile phone and or your laptop, or you go to the bank. And their computer system, which is just one ledger, says, yes, Rich has $20 in the account and he's going to send $10, or I want to take $10 out the account. The system then says, yes, he has $10. I go to take the $10, or I ask the teller to take $10. She pushes some buttons, or I push some buttons, 10, in the ATM. It verifies that, yes, I'm asking for $10. I put in my PIN code. It processes the transaction. As it processes the transaction, it spits me out $10, or the teller gives me $10. And then $10 gets removed from my balance sheet, the same way it happens inside the Ledger system, and it transferred it over to me via cash. And if I was sending it over to Mike or Sally or Jim or Susie or Miguel, whichever the case may be, that money would be added to their account. The same thing happens with Bitcoin and or Cardano or any crypto that is out there. It verifies that, one, the transaction is being performed by the person. The person has X amount of crypto inside their wallet, and that X amount of crypto will be deducted. All the systems in unison say, yes, this is a valid wallet, is a valid transaction, and it's been signed by the owner. And yes, the wallet address that is going to is valid. And as a result, we're going to transfer the coins over to X person. And for a better idea, there's different types of blockchains. There's public blockchains, which me and you use every day. So Bitcoin's a public blockchain. ADA is a public blockchain. Ethereum is a public blockchain. Polkadot's a public blockchain. Just about every cryptocurrency that is out there right now, crypto asset, that is out there right now has a public ledger, which is for the public and everyone can access it. Then you have private blockchains, which obviously meant for centralized systems. And then those systems are only used for what that private use case is for, and that is it. Then you have hybrid blockchains with a consortium of a combination of public and private blockchains and contains centralized and decentralized features. For example, Energy Web Foundation, Dragon Chain, and R3 are examples of consortium blockchains where they have private and or public features to them, which make them now hybrid. And it all depends on how you look at it. You know, it's really, we don't want to deal with consortium type of blockchains as a use case for everybody, but they will be used for local governments, especially when we start talking about probably DIDs and having centralized blockchain servers run by the government, secured by the government, centralized by the government again, and then we'll work in conjunction with public chains more like Cardano, Ethereum, Polkadot, even Solana and so forth, right? Avalanche and so many other blockchains that are out there. And then we have side chains. So side chains are like layer 2s that work with a main chain, and it uses the main chain as security, but then processes transactions on its own. And it does that in a very unique way. So here goes the definition by them. A sidechain is a blockchain running parallel on the main chain. It allows users to move digital assets between two different blockchains and improve scalability, efficiency. An example of a sidechain is Liquid Network. A real example of a sidechain, which would be more familiar to you if you are involved in this ecosystem, would be Avalanche, Phantom Network, Binance Smart Chain. Those are layer 2 systems that are working right now as a sidechain on Ethereum. Cardano has just released the capabilities for it to be capable of having sidechains, and that is coming very soon on Cardano. Everybody's excited about it. It will make a major improvement in the next 2 years of how Cardano is interoperable with many other networks, and it's going to be very interesting as time goes on. So this article goes on and talks about the history of blockchain, who invented blockchain, and who owns blockchain. So the history of blockchain is just really a large database of secure transactions that happens on a network, and it's immutable, right? The blockchain holds that. Again, it's blocks of data chained together, and it's all done on what's considered a public ledger and is accessible to just about anybody, as long as you have key information. But you can query the ledger and get this information from the chain, and if you kind of understand what's going on or who may be what, you can try and figure out whose wallet is what and what transactions happen when and where and by who. And that's all because it's public. So who invented blockchain? The first blockchain was a protocol proposed by cryptographer David Chaum in 1982. In late 1991, Stuart Haber and W. Scott Stornetta wrote about their work on consortiums, but it was the infamous Satoshi Nakamoto, presumed pseudonym for the person or group of people who invented and implemented the first blockchain network after deploying the world's first digital currency called Bitcoin. And this is where we are right now. So Satoshi Nakamoto was the one or the group or persons or person who invented Bitcoin and the ledgers that we have now and opened the gateway, the floodway for the technology that we have today in our world, in this whole ecosystem of cryptography and crypto assets or cryptocurrencies as you may know them. So let's take another look at something that I kind of brought up. So I made this, I'm going to call like a little graph. So the circle represents a chain. These little boxes may represent the blocks, and these triangles represent the nodes, right? Which are then considered either block producers and or validators, right? So we go on blockchain. What happens is the validator, a transaction comes through the validator and or block producer. The information then goes out and through cryptography, through mathematical equations, develop a block, if they do develop the block, to secure the data onto the chain. And as a result, that data gets recorded, block one gets done, and all the information and transactions are recorded into that block. And then as a reward, the validator is rewarded with more coins. So in this case, it'd be Cardano or Bitcoin. And then that node gets rewarded for performing the transaction and securing the block and making things happen on the network. So again, the same node one does it to block two, and the same thing happens again. So transactions again recorded into block number two. Node one receives a reward for that happening, and who's ever running the node or validator is now rewarded with extra coins. It happens the same way in essence with Bitcoin and also with proof of stake, proof of work. For producing blocks, the system is rewarding the node validator a certain amount of crypto coins. So it happens between Bitcoin and or Cardano, proof of work or proof of stake, that a validator or a block producer is rewarded with coins for within the same network for producing blocks. And this is whether it's Bitcoin and or Cardano is the same thing. Other networks operate in similar fashions. Ethereum does proof of stake as well. And more or less, there's many projects that are moving towards proof of stake versus proof of work. So not to go into too much detail, but the same thing happens again with node 2. So node 2 produces block 3 and 4. And again, node 2 is rewarded for doing the same activity as node 1. And node 1 and 2 are constantly communicating with each other throughout the time to verify the information that each one is doing and to put it within each other's layer of ledger. And then as that happens, these two work in what's called consensus, working together to secure the network and make sure that no outside influence or attack attempts can be made, because they're securing the network and they're making sure that all the transactions are validated, verified, and secured. So I hope that gave you a better idea what blockchain is really all about. It's not really that complicated. All it really is a ledger of information of transactions that are stored within the network. And it's stored on blocks of data. It's like having a book on a computer system, and then it's chained together throughout the network so that way it can't be lost and or manipulated in any way, and it's secured. And every computer system within that network is constantly validating each other's information, and if something changes, they reject it and it doesn't get put into the ledger and it gets removed. And all transactions, remember, are immutable. That means they can't be erased. They can't be tampered with. They can't be doctored or whatever have you. They just can't do it. It doesn't happen because the systems are constantly working in consensus to validate all the information between one another. And if one's a bad actor, the system lets it know that it's a bad actor and rejects its information completely. So this was Class 101 on blockchain. My name is Rich, and I hope you enjoyed the information. If you like the content, hit that like button. If you want to get notified, hit that bell notification, let you know every time I'm making a video. And on top of that, subscribe to the channel. Let's get it out to more people. Share the video if you know someone who's having a difficulty trying to understand blockchain. Give them this video. Let them sit down and watch it, and hopefully I enlighten them. Hopefully I enlighten you as well. Thank you again for watching the video. Blackstar, light in the darkness. Peace.